It's becoming increasingly clear that the entire narrative Blake Lively tried to construct around this supposed smear campaign could be on the verge of completely collapsing. There are some major developments happening behind the scenes that could seriously shake things up in this case. What's particularly interesting is how people in the entertainment industry are beginning to distance themselves from her publicly, something that rarely happens unless the tide has truly turned. A perfect example of this shift comes from none other than Jay Leno. Jay is known for being universally well-liked in Hollywood, a genuinely kind, down-to-earth person who generally avoids getting involved in controversies or drama. He's someone who's extremely careful with his words, particularly when it comes to issues involving his peers in the entertainment world. That's why it's so shocking and significant that when asked whether there was any chance he'd ever have Blake Lively on the back of his bike, Jay responded bluntly that would never happen, adding that maybe Justin has a better chance, and even more damning, everybody has a better chance than her. It was a moment that genuinely stunned a lot of people watching, because it wasn't just a subtle dig, it was a public dismissal from someone the industry respects deeply. Hearing something like this from Jay Leno speaks volumes about how Hollywood is really feeling right now. Hollywood has always had a reputation for protecting its own up until it doesn't. And when someone like Jay begins to distance themselves this openly, it's often a sign that the damage is already done and others will soon follow suit. What makes this moment even more telling is that Jay Leno is not the type to throw shade lightly. When he was asked about the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni situation months ago, he brushed it off, saying it seemed silly and that frankly, with California on fire at the time, people had more important things to worry about than following the latest Hollywood scandal. He didn't want to get involved then, but now his tone has shifted completely. People close to Jay often talk about how kind and genuine he is. Neighbors say he's always out in his car collection, greeting people, smiling, joking, just a genuinely good human being. During an event where he was promoting a movie, he was so down to earth that after the screening, he offered his popcorn to people standing near him. That's the kind of person he is. It's also worth noting that he's currently caring for his wife, who has been diagnosed with dementia. Instead of placing her in a care facility, he's chosen to personally be there for her every day. That says a lot about his character. For someone like Jay Leno, who is both beloved and respected and outside the industry, to publicly throw shade at Blake is a massive red flag for her reputation. This isn't just gossip or light-hearted teasing, it signals a serious shift in how the industry perceives her. But while Hollywood starts to turn its back, the legal situation surrounding Blake is only getting worse. One of the most contentious parts of this case right now is this so-called Sham lawsuit, a nickname that's caught on because most people believe it's exactly that, a sham. Officially, the company is called Vonson, but it's become clear to many observers that this lawsuit was little more than a legal loophole designed to quietly extract private information from individuals without proper justification. The way this unfolded is deeply troubling. Vonson suddenly filed a lawsuit against 10 anonymous individuals listed only as Jane and John Does. Their first move was to subpoena Stephanie Jones. But here's where it gets messy. Stephanie Jones then took possession of the phone belonging to Jennifer Abel, who was working for her at the time, but was preparing to leave the company. Stephanie accessed everything on that phone and somehow, surprise, surprise, this treasure trove of private data conveniently ended up in the hands of Blake Lively's legal team. Not long after, the New York Times published explosive allegations that mirrored the contents pulled from that phone. This entire sequence of events has raised a lot of questions about legality and ethics. How did Blake's team get access to Jennifer Abel's phone data? Was the subpoena even legitimate? Now Baldoni's legal team, along with Jennifer Abel herself, is demanding to see the original subpoena that was sent to Stephanie Jones. The alarming part is that Jennifer Abel claims she never saw a subpoena at all. What's even more suspicious is that while Van Zandt's team has shown curated portions of this subpoena to outlets like the Daily Mail and Deadline, they're refusing to share the complete, unredacted document with Baldoni's legal team. Their excuse, "Oh, we already sent the judge what he needs a month ago, nothing else to see here." It's a highly questionable move that reeks of evasion. To make matters worse, Blake Lively's team is trying to claim that Van Zandt is an entirely separate entity unrelated to them with separate legal representation. But documents and previous reports have already established clear ties between Blake Ryan Reynolds and the company. They can pretend there's no connection all they want, but the paper trail tells a very different story. Their strategy seems transparent, create enough distance between themselves and Van Zandt to deny responsibility when things inevitably go south. The documents related to Van Zandt that Baldoni's team already received didn't even come directly from Van Zandt. They were filtered through Blake's legal team first. Of course, anyone can guess what happens when one side gets to cherry-pick which documents get shared. They'll select anything that makes them look clean and omit anything that could damage their case. But Baldoni's attorneys aren't falling for that. They're demanding the full set, every email, every communication, every file related to the Van Zandt subpoena and lawsuit. Another bombshell detail emerged about Blake's publicist Leslie Dart. She reportedly called Melissa Nasson, someone else involved in this drama, before the subpoena was even issued to Stephanie Jones. During this call, Leslie allegedly said something to the effect of, "I've seen the texts, you're going down." This is hugely significant because if true, it means the information was already circulating among Blake's team prior to any legal authorization to obtain it. The problem is this was a phone call, not a text or email, so proving the exact contents of that conversation becomes challenging. At best, phone records can confirm the call happened, but not what was said. It becomes a he said, she said situation unless more concrete proof emerges. From the very beginning, many people have wondered why anyone would attempt something this risky. It's not like Blake's legal team could honestly believe that this scheme wouldn't eventually come to light. Once you see someone's private communications under false pretenses, there's always a paper trail, and it was always going to raise questions in court. Blake's lawyers continue to push the argument that Van Zandt's lawyers are completely independent from her own. She's represented by Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, and Manette Phelps and Phillips to heavyweight firms. But even this distancing tactic isn't holding up because the ownership of Van Zandt itself traces back directly to entities tied to Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. It's a flimsy defense that the judge seems increasingly unlikely to buy. Adding fuel to the fire, Jennifer Abel has now filed a motion to compel a formal request asking the judge to force Van Zandt and Blake's team to turn over every single relevant document related to this subpoena fiasco. If the judge grants this motion, and the documents show what most observers already suspect, that the subpoena was obtained under false pretenses or was part of an intimidation tactic, then the consequences could be devastating for Blake's case. Here's what's at stake if the judge determines that the evidence obtained via this Sham lawsuit was illegally or improperly acquired. It could be thrown out entirely. That means the text messages, emails, and other data pulled from Jennifer Abel's phone, the very foundation of Blake's smear campaign allegations, would become inadmissible in court. Without that evidence, Blake has no case. Her entire narrative about being the victim of a coordinated smear campaign falls apart. This isn't just a minor procedural hiccup, it's a potentially fatal blow to Blake's legal position. Furthermore, if the judge concludes that this subpoena was an abuse of process, meaning it was filed with the intent to harass, intimidate, or circumvent normal legal channels, there could be sanctions. That might include hefty fines, formal reprimands against the lawyers involved, or even the striking of entire claims from the case. In other words, parts of Blake's lawsuit could simply be wiped out. If that happens, Blake might be forced to settle, and not on favorable terms. Worse, she could end up facing a judgment against her. It's a stunning turnaround from someone who initially appeared to be using the legal system as a weapon only. to have that strategy backfire spectacularly. This whole saga is a glaring reminder of how broken the legal system can be, not just in Hollywood, but in general. It's not always about who's right or who's wrong. It often comes down to who can play the system better, who can afford the better lawyers, and who can manipulate technicalities to their advantage. Look at the Bill Cosby case, a man who had 80 women come forward with harrowing stories of abuse, yet he walked free because of a technicality. It's devastating to think about how many victims are failed by a system designed to protect the powerful. For everyone caught in the crosshairs of this Justin Baldoni, his family, and countless others, it must feel like being dragged through the mud in public while fighting an uphill battle just to clear your name. And even beyond the primary parties, the ripple effects have dragged in publicists, journalists, former employees, people who never asked to be part of this mess, but got swept up in any way. If the judge ultimately rules that Vonson must release all communications with Blake's team and with Stephanie Jones, it could blow the lid off everything. The public would finally get a full picture of how this entire scheme was orchestrated, from the back-channel deals to the weaponization of private information. And it would be a reckoning not just for Blake Lively, but for the entire shadowy machinery that tried to pull this off. At the end of the day, what this case is really exposing is how the rich and powerful sometimes believe the rules don't apply to them until they do. Whether justice will ultimately prevail remains to be seen. But for now, it's clear that the walls are closing in fast, though it's starting to look like the entire narrative that Blake Lively has carefully constructed around this alleged smear campaign is on the verge of completely falling apart. What's unfolding behind the scenes right now isn't just another Hollywood drama. This is something that could potentially change everything for everyone involved. As more evidence comes to light, the question isn't whether Blake Lively's legal team overstepped. The question is just how far they went and whether the court is going to let them get away with it. For those who've been following this story closely, you already know how tangled this web has become. But for those just catching up, trust me, the details are jaw-dropping. Let's start with a moment that truly captured the mood in Hollywood right now. Jay Leno, yes, the Jay Leno, a man who is universally respected in the industry, a man known for avoiding controversy, staying neutral, and keeping things lighthearted, has broken his silence in a way that no one expected. When asked whether there was any chance he'd ever have Blake Lively on the back of his iconic motorcycle, Jay didn't hold back his response that would never happen. And then, without missing a beat, he added, maybe Justin has a better chance. And just to drive the point home, he finished with, everybody has a better chance than her. When that clip surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Jay Leno isn't the type to shade anyone, especially not publicly. He's beloved for a reason. People who know Jay personally always describe him as one of the kindest, most genuine people you'll ever meet in Hollywood. And for someone like Jay to publicly dismiss Blake like that, it's not just a throwaway comment, it's a message. A message that even the most neutral figures in the entertainment industry have seen enough. Remember, this is the same Jay Leno who just months ago, when asked about the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni situation, brushed it off as silly, saying there were bigger things happening like wildfires ravaging California at the time. Back then he was hesitant to comment, but not anymore. That shift in tone tells you everything. Jay Leno's reputation isn't built on gossip or taking sides. He's the kind of guy who offers strangers popcorn after movie screenings. He waves at neighbors from his vintage cars, cracks jokes with anyone who stops by, and even now, he's spending his time caring for his wife who's been diagnosed with dementia. Instead of putting her in a care facility, he's chosen to be by her side, caring for her personally, a testament to the kind of person he truly is. So when someone like Jay distances himself from Blake Lively this publicly, you better believe the damage is already done behind the scenes. Hollywood protects its own until it doesn't. And this is the clearest signal yet that the industry has turned. The legal collapse begins But if you think that's bad, wait until you hear what's happening in court. Because the legal house of cards Blake and her team built is crumbling fast. The centerpiece of this disaster is something now nicknamed the Van Sham lawsuit, a play on the actual name Vonson, because nearly everyone involved agrees it's a total sham. This so-called company filed a mysterious lawsuit against 10 anonymous individuals, John and Jane Does, and their first major move was subpoenaing a woman named Stephanie Jones. Here's where things get dark. Stephanie Jones then took possession of Jennifer Abel's phone. Jennifer was working for her at the time. It was on her way out of the company. Stephanie accessed all the private data on that phone, texts, emails, everything. And magically, this information landed in the hands of Blake Lively's legal team. Not long after, explosive claims mirroring the contents of that phone showed up in the New York Times. The question everyone's asking now is how? How did this data get from Jennifer's private phone to the front page of a national paper? Was the subpoena even legitimate? Or was this a calculated attempt to weaponize private information? Through legal loopholes, Jennifer Abel, along with Justin Baldoni's legal team, is demanding to see the original subpoena that supposedly justified this. And here's the kicker: Jennifer claims she never even saw a subpoena. What's even shadier is that while Van Zandt's legal team was willing to share curated snippets of the document with media outlets like the Daily Mail and Deadline, they're flat out refusing to share it with Baldoni's legal team. Their excuse: "Oh, we sent what the judge needed, already, nothing more to discuss." You're right. The paper trail that won't go away. Meanwhile, Blake's lawyers are scrambling to argue that Vonson is completely independent of her, separate entity, separate lawyers, no connection. But anyone who's seen the paperwork knows that's nonsense. Van Zandt's ownership traces directly back to entities linked to Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. This isn't a coincidence. This is a shell company, a legal smokescreen set up to create distance between Blake and the dirty work. And guess what? The documents that Baldoni's team has seen didn't even come directly from Vonson. Nope. They were filtered through Blake's lawyers first. Meaning, and let's be blunt here, they had every opportunity to cherry-pick what looked harmless and bury what didn't. But it gets worse. Blake's own publicist Leslie Dart reportedly made a phone call to Melissa Nasson before the subpoena was ever officially issued. The alleged message: "I've seen the texts, you're going down." Think about that. How could Leslie have seen texts obtained via subpoena before the subpoena was even issued? Simple answer: she couldn't have. Unless, of course, the information was acquired through illegitimate channels well before anything was legally authorized. The problem, unfortunately, is that phone calls leave no transcripts. Sure, phone logs can prove the call happened, but the content of that call, that's a lot harder to prove. Still, it's one more crack in an already crumbling facade. The legal strategy implodes from the beginning. Anyone paying attention could see the problem here. Why would anyone set up something this risky, a sham lawsuit, to secretly grab someone's private data, knowing that eventually someone would start asking how they got it? Blake's team either didn't think that far ahead or were arrogant enough to believe they'd never be questioned. Either way, the consequences are coming. Blake's lawyers are trying everything to convince the court that Vonson acted independently, but the judge and the public aren't stupid. The ownership trail is obvious. Vonson is Blake's. The game is up. Jennifer Abel isn't backing down. She's filed a motion to compel a legal demand forcing Vonson and Blake's team to turn over everything, every email, every document, every conversation that led to the subpoena and the resulting leak of her private data. And here's the part that's sending shockwaves through the legal community: if the judge grants this motion, and if the documents confirm what everyone already suspects, the consequences could be catastrophic for Blake. If it turns out the subpoena was fraudulent, or part of an intimidation tactic, the judge can throw out all the evidence obtained through it. That means every text, every email, everything Blakestein used to build their case about her. Suppose smear campaign becomes inadmissible in court. No evidence, no case, no narrative left. But as a the potential fallout, it doesn't stop there. If the judge rules that the subpoena was an abuse of process, a legal term meaning the system was weaponized to harass rather than pursue legitimate claims, sanctions are on the table. And we're not just talking about a slap on the wrist. This could mean massive financial penalties, formal reprimands for the lawyers involved, and even having entire parts of Blake's lawsuit thrown out completely. At that point, Blake would be left with few options: settle and not on favorable terms, or risk losing everything in court. Worse, the court could even issue a judgment against her. This is the textbook definition of a backfire. Blake started this by thinking she could control the narrative, but instead of silencing her critics or intimidating the people around her, she's exposed herself and possibly her husband Ryan Reynolds to legal consequences that could follow them for years. A broken system on full display with this case really shows is just how broken the legal system can be when the rich and powerful decide to play dirty. It's not about truth, it's about who has the money to manipulate the system better. Look at the Bill Cosby case, 80 women, 80, and what happened, he walked free because of a technicality. Everyone knows what he did, but the legal system wasn't built to deliver justice. It was built for the people who can afford to game it. It's heartbreaking not just for Justin Baldoni and his family, but for everyone dragged into this nightmare. Publicists, former employees, and innocent bystanders have all been dragged through the mud while a rich and powerful machine tried to bury the truth. The reckoning is coming if the judge orders full transparency, every email, every message, every whisper of communication between Bonds and Black. Ease Team and Stephanie Jones. It will be like setting off a bomb inside this entire case. The truth will come out, and when it does, it won't just damage Blake Lively's reputation, it will expose the playbook that far too many celebrities and corporations use to weaponize the legal system against anyone who stands in their way. The walls are closing in fast. Whether justice prevails this time, that remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, this isn't just about a legal fight anymore. This is about exposing how power, influence, and privilege can be used as weapons until someone finally stands up and says no more.